In these notes, we will be talking about cellular energy and the relationship between photosynthesis and cellular respiration. All living things need energy. Living things can consist of plants, fungi, which are mushrooms, animals, cows, or including humans, because we are animals, and bacteria. The energy that we all need comes from glucose, which is a type of sugar and is a monosaccharide and a carbohydrate, since carbohydrates are sugars. Your first key word is glucose. How do living things obtain glucose? So autotrophs, they make their own food or energy from sunlight. So they will make glucose through a process called photosynthesis from sunlight. An example of autotrophs would be plants and a couple bacteria. Heterotrophs can get glucose by consuming other organisms. So animals, fungi, and most other bacteria, they will eat their food to get energy, and glucose will be broken down in your body to be able to use that for energy. The energy from glucose is used in different types of areas in our cells. So it can be used for mechanical work, which is how cells move around, transport work, how stuff is transported in and out of the cell, and chemical work, such as how enzymes are used to speed up our reactions and lower the activation energy to make a product faster. Your second keyword is is. Rather than burn up all the energy of a glucose molecule at once, a cell is going to convert the energy into smaller, reusable molecules known as ATP. ATP is probably the most important molecule in our body, and that saves our energy for when we need it. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. So an ATP molecule is made up of an adenine, base, a ribose, sugar, and 3 phosphate groups. When ATP is used, it's going to change into ADP. So before we had 3 phosphate groups here in ATP, triphosphate, think about a tricycle. It has 3 wheels. And then when it turns into ADP, it's going to only have 2 wheels. Di means 2, just like bi means 2 in bicycle. So it's going to change into adenosine diphosphate. Your third keyword is or a. ATP is going to release the bond where the third and second ATP phosphate are held together when energy needs to be used. So when energy needs to be used, it's going to release the phosphate on the end here, where this high energy bond here, that's where our energy is stored. So when our body wants to use that energy, it's going to release that phosphate group. Okay, so down here it started with 3. It's going to release the phosphate group to get our energy that we need in our body, and then it's going to become ADP and not ATP anymore. Cells store energy by adding the phosphate back onto the ADP to make ATP again. It's kind of like recharging a battery. So when our body gets more glucose again, and it needs to store that energy in an ATP molecule again, it will just add that phosphate group back on and store the energy in that high energy bond located between the second and third phosphate group to make ATP again. And then when we want to use it again, it will release the phosphate again into our body. So the energy to do this comes from foods like glucose, such as spaghetti, or if you need some sugar, maybe you'll eat some candy. So anything with a lot of energy in it. So energy is very useful, and we need it for short-term use and long-term use, but ATP is great for transferring energy, but it's not very good for storing energy for a long time or large amounts. So it's going to be for quick energy, not like long-term energy, what lipids are used for. A single molecule of glucose stores more than 90 times the chemical energy than a single ATP molecule. So back to autotrophs and heterotrophs. Autotrophs, such as plants and some bacteria, anything green, they are going to absorb energy from sunlight, and they need to make their own food, so they need to make glucose. They do not eat like we do, so they're going to make their own glucose, and then they're going to convert that glucose into the ATP so it can store its energy in there and use it for cells. In heterotrophs, such as animals, certain fungi, and bacteria, they're going to consume or eat glucose in the food that we eat every day, and you're going to be able to convert that glucose to ATP for the cell to use. Your fourth keyword is sugar. So before I move on, just to make sure you realize that heterotrophs completely skip the sunlight step. We do not need sunlight for our food making. We do not make our own food. So just know that autotroph means self. Auto means self, make. So they need to make their own food from the sun. All right, how do autotrophs make their own food? They make it during a process called photosynthesis. So in the presence of light, plants are going to transform water, or H2O, and carbon dioxide, CO2, into our glucose molecule. And then it does not need oxygen, so it's going to release that into the atmosphere, which then is for us to breathe. So without plants, animals would not be able to survive because we would not be able to breathe in the oxygen we breathe in every day. So if it wasn't for plants, we would not be here. So in the process of photosynthesis, carbon dioxide and water are taken into the plant along with light. Okay, you see the light is on the arrow here. And then glucose is made for the plant, and then it's going to release oxygen into the air. To get more complicated down here, it's how many carbon dioxides, so 6, and 6 waters and light, and 1 glucose is made, okay, for every 6 waters and 6 carbon dioxides, and then 6 oxygens are going to be released into the atmosphere. Here is a little picture of where that's happening and how that's happening. So the reactant, which we covered before, that's what goes into the reaction. So the reactants would be carbon dioxide and water and light, okay, are going into the organelle which photosynthesis happens in the cell. In plants and some bacteria is the chloroplast. Okay, that's the green organelle inside a plant cell. Okay, and then when it's done, it's going to go out into the atmosphere of oxygen, but glucose is going to stay in the cell and then get converted into ATP for the cell to use. Your fifth keyword is used. Okay, so enzymes for photosynthesis are in the chloroplast. So this is a chloroplast, this green organelle here. And inside the chloroplast are these stack-like structures. They kind of look like stacks of checkers if you ever played those, called thylakoids. Okay, they are sac-like photosynthetic membranes inside the chloroplast. So these thylakoids here are going to be the place where photosynthesis actually takes place inside of the chloroplast. So this is where all the magic happens, right here in these thylakoids. Okay, so the sun is going to hit them, and there's going to be some reactions that happen in there to then make your glucose and oxygen. Because of these structures of the thylakoids in here, okay, they're stack-like structures, creates a lot of surface area. So there's a lot of area for the sun to hit these thylakoids along the outside. Okay, so that allows for more chemical reactions to happen, and then increases the amount of food or glucose that the cell or organelle individually is going to make. Your sixth keyword is for, F-O-R. Okay, so now we're going to talk about cellular respiration. So a big thing to remember with cellular respiration is that it happens in both plants and animals. So photosynthesis only happens in animals and plants, not animals. And cellular respiration is going to happen in both. Okay, so we both need to convert our food into energy. So plants and animals need energy. So energy from glucose is going to be released through a series of energy extracting reactions to make ATP. So this is where all our ATP is made, and that is very, very important. So it's going to take that glucose from what was made during photosynthesis or from what we ate. It's going to take in oxygen. So we do this all day. This happens in our body. Okay, it takes in oxygen. Plants also are going to take in oxygen as well. Okay, so plants technically take in oxygen as well. It's going to release carbon dioxide. Okay, so we breathe out carbon dioxide, and we produce water in our body. And then energy is made. Okay, so we need this every day to be able to even get out of bed and move and walk around at school. So this is how our body goes about our everyday life. So this reaction is very important. So photosynthesis happened in the chloroplast, and now cellular respiration is going to happen in the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is in both plant and animal cells, while the chloroplast was just in the plant cell. So mitochondria is in both, so it's going to take place. The glucose is going to go in along with the oxygen, and it's going to make carbon dioxide and water and our ATP molecules that we need for energy. So your seventh keyword is energy. Enzymes for cellular respiration are found in the mitochondrion. Mitochondrion is singular, so one mitochondrion versus many or more mitochondria. Okay, so if that's asked on anything, that's why there's a mitochondrion here. So inside this mitochondrion is something called cristae. Cristae are these folds of the inner membrane of the mitochondrion right here. This is where the ATP is going to be made. Okay, so before we had the thylakoids in the chloroplast, here we have the cristae of the inner membrane. So this is where all those reactions are going to happen and where your ATP is going to be made. Okay, so comparing photosynthesis and respiration. Okay, so we have CO2 going in, H2O going in, and energy from the sun going into photosynthesis, and it's going to make glucose, C6H12O6, and oxygen. And down here in cellular respiration, we have glucose going in, oxygen going in, making carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So if you look at this, it's completely opposite from each other. So down here we have glucose and oxygen. Up here on this side of the arrow, glucose and oxygen. Up here on this side of the arrow, carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Down here on this side of the arrow, carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So they're complete opposites of each other. That means they need each other to happen. Okay, so without plants, we would not be able to go through cellular respiration, or the plant would not be able to go through cellular respiration as well. Without cellular respiration, we would not be able to have photosynthesis. So it's a big working process of them two happening together. And your 8th keyword, can't see it. Your 8th keyword is. I don't know. I can't see this keyword. I'm sorry. 4. I think it's 4. Let's see. Okay, so here is a picture of respiration and photosynthesis happening for each other. Okay, so here is the chloroplast, and here is the mitochondria, or mitochondrion. So photosynthesis, only some plants and some bacteria cells, and mitochondria is in all eukaryotic cells. Okay, so plants, animals, fungi. You can see that the process is happening in each and that they both need each other to happen. You can see the light going in here to the plant, and that's in the chloroplast. You can see it hitting those thylakoids, and then the reaction happening, and then those products over there going into the mitochondria, and then creating your ATP, and creating CO2 and water, which goes right back into the chloroplast. Your 9th keyword is organisms. So I think it was 4 organisms. And that's it. So if you have any questions, please ask. It's very important to listen to these notes because it is very complicated material. We're going to get more into the specifics of photosynthesis and respiration now. So please make sure you understand the basics before you move on.